love relationships and spirituality. Love relationships on your spiritual path. This talk will have two parts. The first one about dysfunctional relationships, this one, and the next video about functional relationships. So, first about dysfunctional relationships. It's important because we have learned in our culture to admire and seek confidence in others. Both men and women love confidence in their partners. Probably women more so than men. This might be a cultural thing, not a human thing, but in many cases it is like that. Sorry for the generalization to all women who listen to this, but at least look inside if there could be some truth to it, that you seek, maybe unconsciously, confidence in the man you love. Because real confidence is very rare. Less than 1% of all people have real confidence in themselves. Most people fake it. So if you're after confidence, you're very likely to fall into the conman trap. Conmen are called conmen because they inspire confidence. But their confidence is fake. They will make sure that you will see actions that seem confident. Because words are cheap, most people know that already, but actions not so cheap. Magicians, con men, and advertisement marketing specialists and spin doctors of politicians, they all apply the same rules of manipulation so that they themselves or their clients come across as confident and to sell you something that you never knew you needed in the first place. And the most skilled in this are narcissists and psychopaths, which is not the same, but they both have these very honed skills in manipulation and confidence games. Male narcissists and psychopaths seem very confident, trustworthy, masculine and sexual. And many women feel drawn to them like moths to the light. If you're one of them, get psychological help why you're drawn to such men and get the hell out of Dodge. Full psychopathy, full on active psychopathy is rare, but not that rare. About 1%. And might not be treatable. So if you're in a relationship with one, get out of there, get some therapy where you fell for him or her in the first place. And psychopaths are not only male. Serial killers are mostly male, but this is again not the same as psychopaths. Not all psychopaths are serial killers. Most of them are not. And most psychopaths are either compensated or they have it in a dormant state. But those in whom it is active, they're very hard to tell apart from narcissists. Just as a thumb rule, if someone appears confident, he or she is most probably faking it. Real confidence is very rare. Less than 1% of all people you meet are actually confident. Most of the time it's an overcompensation into megalomania from the basic poise of minority complex, and they have practiced it for so long that they probably believe it themselves, but they're not actually confident. And this also means that you probably have to give up if you have that predilection that you want a confident partner. You probably have to give it up. There's almost no one out there except narcissists, and they are also in reality not really confident. So what are men drawn to in women in dysfunctional relationships? Often it is something like a codependent woman feels very nurturing and sweet. A woman who has had a deep trauma, like child abuse, for example, often attracts men like magnets because they create the half-conscious feeling in men that they want and need to be rescued. Yeah? Men often like to rescue women. But also some women like to rescue men. This is the second thing. The first problem is this craving for confidence, and the second, this will or need to rescue. The helper syndrome. And the extreme form of the helper syndrome which many spiritual people have to some degree or another is codependency. And codependency often goes hand in hand with a partner who has another problem, like narcissism or psychopathy or some addiction like alcoholism. Your partner will not change his or her habits through your codependent help. To the contrary, it's enabling them to stay like that. Then there are also female narcissists who, of course, play men like a fiddle. They're excellent manipulators. Then there are women with borderline syndrome who seem to men very alive, and they radiate freedom and sexiness. But in actual fact, it's self-hatred and self-destruction. And then, of course, there is depression and mania, the probably most common psychiatric disturbances, and OCD. OCD is probably, for spiritual purposes, the least of an obstacle. Mania can be a problem because if you anyway tend to overestimate what you can do and should do, this will lead to overestimate where you are on the spiritual path. And depression the other way around. You will all the time underestimate where you are, and you will feel insufficient and lacking all the time. Things like depression and mania and OCD, they can disappear on the spiritual path. Once awakening or enlightenment hits you, these things can disappear, just as addictions can also disappear. But they don't have to. Enlightenment is not in itself a psychological or psychiatric cure. You have to deal with your stuff. As I've said before many times, you have to deal with your childhood traumata. Many spiritual gurus are not in a steady relationship. They're either not at all in a relationship, they're kind of celibate or at least single. Others, they swap partners all the time, which is also a way to avoid a real relationship. But most people on the spiritual path, I know they are in relationships. Often even married with kids. Like me, for example. I'm married and I have kids. But about the challenges of these less dramatic relationships, I will talk in the next video. This video is about what to do if you are in a dramatic or violent or codependent relationships with lies and deception. Psychopathy might not be treatable. Not enough is known about it yet. If you are a psychopath, just leave others well alone. If you are in a relationship with a psychopath, male or female, get the hell out of Dodge. If you suffer from mania, depression, borderline, codependency, narcissism, and all these cluster B disorders, get help. It's very unlikely that you will get out of it by yourself without any help, professional help. Don't assume that these things will disappear on your spiritual path by themselves. They may and they may not. It is very helpful to have a deep and honest look into what you really find attractive in other people. Not in your mind. In your mind you will tell yourself and others all kinds of things what you find attractive. And most of the time this is not true. Interesting is what you are drawn to instinctively, unconsciously. Do you actually like lies and violence and manipulation? Or maybe you don't know anything else, because that's the example you got from your parents or other adults when you were a child. Yeah, you observed, okay, this is how men and women interact. They scream at each other, for example, or they manipulate each other. They lie to each other. They hide their real emotions from each other. If you had this experience, you have to work on that, because you were subject to dysfunctional role models. Good family constellation, for example, is a solution if the facilitator is really good, or things like radical allowing, focusing, radical honesty. Yeah, there's this book by Brad Blanton about radical honesty. It's good to start with yourself. If you start being honest, then you will also attract more people who are honest. If you stop manipulating others, you will attract more people who are not manipulative. Yeah? Especially if you're in this helper syndrome or codependence corner, which is, as I have said, very common in spiritual circles. This is also a form of manipulation. Why should you know what's best for someone else? Just concern yourself with yourself, not so much with others. Relationships can be a crutch. Relationships can be a way to run away from your own issues. And it can be a really good thing to not have a relationship for some time, for some years, until you get to grips with your own internal struggles and half or unconscious mechanics and dynamics. This is always the case for even if you don't have problems of a psychiatric nature, or your partner doesn't, or partners didn't, then there are different struggles, different issues in relationships of spiritually oriented people, even if you're awake or enlightened, that are of interest. It's very rare that suddenly everything is harmony, especially if only one of the team, if only one in the love relationship partnership is awake or enlightened. That can get iffy. So that will be the topic of the next video. See you soon in the next video. Thank you to all my Patreons. Thank you for joining me on Patreon. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video, and see you soon.